to realize that if we view people in all of the relationships that they're looking for and what needs to be healed, then we can start to be more effective when we're addressing some of those issues. So if one of them is broken, it is poverty. If they do not understand God, then they have spiritual poverty. There are false gods, there are addictions, there's materialism. Poverty of being, if they don't understand their own worth, they may get a God complex or they may get low self-esteem. It can go either way. Or they have poverty of community. You start to see exploitation and self-centeredness coming into play. And then poverty within the environment of stewardship. We have a loss of purpose, workaholics, and materialism. So we need to be just aware of what is happening. We're not addressing everything all the time, every day. But if we're aware of what's happening, we can start to identify what's happening in people's lives and how to lift them up. And we do this in 4 strategies of service. So some of this is a refresher for you. Some of it may be new for you. But sometimes in a setting like this, it's good to just lay this foundation again for what we do. So the first strategy is to relieve suffering. When we relieve suffering, there we go. This is a very immediate help. This is handing somebody, there's an urgent need, so you're giving them what they need. This is a short-term, temporary fix to help people through a crisis. They need something now, we give it to them. Their home burned, they need shelter and water and food immediately, and we just give it to them. We can expect quick aid brings quick results, but the change is also short-lived. If you hand somebody a sandwich on the street, how long is that going to help them? Till the next meal. Yeah, you got an hour or two before someone's going to get hungry again. So this is the type, you're relieving something, but it's short-lived. If we continue to offer help like this strategy in a long-term problem, then we're using the wrong strategy, and we get frustrated and they get frustrated because they're going through a lot of hoops to get a little short-term help when they need so much more. And we get discouraged because we keep doing this over and over again with no real change in their lives. So we need to understand this is where a lot of the frustration can come from, if this is what you're frustrated by. When it's done well, we're doing things like providing food and shelter or emotional support to the survivors of a disaster event. We're opening a warming shelter or meals to people living unsheltered. We have a food pantry distributing food to the hungry. We have a bank of medical equipment. I broke my leg, I just need some crutches. So this, in the old adage of fishing, a lot of us know that, this is giving a man a fish. You gave him the fish and he eats today. It is needing to be used seldom. It's for immediate help and temporary. So the next one we go to, there we go, is renewing individuals. And this is a ministry that changes a person's long-term circumstances. You're empowering them to improve their own physical, emotional, intellectual, relational, or social status. Examples of this could be a class. Most of these are classes that offer job search skills. It could be learning English, citizenship classes, financial education, addiction recovery. This is when you're taking one person and I would say rehabilitating them, but one of our speakers once in prison ministry, she says, you can't rehabilitate somebody who has never been habilitated. So you're taking them and pouring into them what they need to know to lead that independent life. It's an investment. This is a longer investment on your part. You work with a few more people at a time often, but the change is longer. So this is teaching a person how to fish. This is giving them the skills to lead that independent life. So as much as possible, you're treating people as the stewards that you want them to become. And then, though, Reverend Desmond Tutu, he said once, we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. So once we do that, we have 2 more strategies for going upstream and saying what's happening. That is, the first one is to revitalize our communities. Some communities are missing key components of a healthy space for residents to thrive. So these may include financial institutions. What makes a healthy community? We have financial institutions, public transportation, affordable medical care, affordable housing, which you're building out here, grocery stores, well-equipped schools. We have schools, are they well-equipped? Revitalizing ministries contribute to the overall well-being of the community for the people, to provide resources for the people that live there. So we can expect that if this happens, there's less need for help when the tools to manage their lives are within reach. People grow in independence and well-being. They can work together as a community. Sometimes just allowing people to come together as a community is going to be a ministry. So this can take a long time. How long have you been working on this building? From conception to today, not just the construction. From visioning to today into next year when it opens. These take time. You're going to be working on a larger scope of an issue, but it can bring some really neat pieces to a community to help them just thrive and move out of this space. This can be the thrift stores with bringing affordable goods into a neighborhood or even a source of jobs. It can be a community garden to grow food if they're in a food where there is not a lot of fresh produce. Low-cost legal clinics to give people access to that kind of care. So you start to see where you're placing the building blocks of a community. So if you are in a community, you have given them a fish, you have taught them how to fish, but now you're asking, is there a pond to fish from? Is there somewhere for them to do? They're standing there with a fishing pole, and they've got the skills to go do a job, but there's no job. So now what do they do? So we use our 4th strategy, and that is rallying for change. So you are able, biblically, to use your voice on behalf of others and to allow them and invite them to do the same for themselves. Because how much more powerful is it to speak for yourself and tell your own story? So what policies, what processes are restricting people from thriving? And the beauty of these 4 is that if you're doing relief and you're renewing individuals, even the community development piece, you are mingling with people. You are hearing their stories. Do you hear stories? What are the circumstances people are living in? And what are the challenges they're facing? What are they trying? In New York City, another director had talked about working with immigrants. And they're supposed to have pro bono help. The refugees, and there's a list of lawyers they can call for pro bono help, but she's hearing from people that they're calling and there's a charge. They're being asked to pay $1,500. And she's like, why aren't you getting help? And they're like, well, we can't, it costs. And she's like, no, that's not right. So she called the numbers and asked for help as if she were a refugee. And we're told that no, that's a mistake. It actually does cost. So you are in a space where you are in proximity to people in these spaces and in these challenges, so you can hear their stories and you can start to advocate to say, what is going on here? Why is this a challenge? What is happening? And to help them navigate that, because they may not be able to. Oh goodness, one of the older in a previous manual, there was a story of a center where people, their utilities were high, and they started just to investigate, asking questions. Questions are powerful. They're powerful. And they found out there was some sort of racketeering on the utility bills. You can make changes from just what you're doing and make some profound changes in very, very small ways. In very small ways. This is not, you don't have to lobby, you don't have to, you're just saying what is happening, because something's wrong. Something's wrong. If people are coming here, something's wrong. What is it, and is it something that you can affect? Of course, Proverbs 31 tells us to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Speak and judge fairly. Speak up and defend the rights of the poor and needy. So now we had, what did we do? We gave them a fish. We taught them how to fish. We made sure there was a pond. And now we're asking, is there a fence around that pond that's keeping them from it, even though it's sitting right in front of them? Does this make sense? Does it make sense? Because these are the strategies you have at your disposal to help the people that you serve. And if you're using the right strategy in the right situation, in the right circumstance, you are going to get different results. So that's one way to get results. What did I hit something that made it stop doing this? I don't know why it stopped. I got this. I got back, forward. Did you do that or did I? Did I do it? Oh, I did it. Okay. I don't know what I did before, but we're back. So the other thing about ministry is it needs to be collaborative. You will be so much more effective when you're collaborative, and you do collaborate. You do, and it's just looking at how many more. If you are bringing in food this afternoon, that's a collaboration. They're bringing you food. We must work strategically. Collaboration, there we go. In partnerships to accomplish shared goals. Too often, and I've added this in kind of recently because people did not seem, it just seemed too new to them. So we're going to go over just the basics of a collaborative relationship. You are collaborating with people who share your heart for the same population. You both care what's happening to this group of people. Let's work together to do something about it. Collaboration increases efficiency and effectiveness. You're able to share and leverage resources for one problem, and it brings wraparound services. You are addressing one slice of a problem. When you bring in partners, they're able to address multiple pieces, and that gives people a bigger boost over their challenges. And it leverages resources and influence as well. So if you are both using one space or you're working together, you're able to use your resources much more effectively. The first thing you need to do when you're collaborating is know why you are collaborating. Why do you collaborate with people? Can somebody just tell me one collaboration you are doing? Who do you work with? Anybody? To bring in food. So what organization do you work with for who's coming today? City Harvest. City Harvest. So you work with City Harvest to bring in food. Why do you need to work with them? What are you trying to gain? There it is.
Because of that need, you'll find that we have a lot more people coming in. So you'll find people actually, there are special people who are actually saying, we need the vegetables. Then culturally, we have different ethnic groups who are now teaching us what is better. Because whereas we figure it's chicken and beef and oxtail and all those things that are not good for us, these people are actually, and will exchange the green vegetables from some of us for the oxtail. So it's a need, and we recognize we have to help, we have to fill that need. We'll have longer, people living longer, people living healthier, because quality of life is what counts.
It's beautiful. That is beautiful. So you are telling us what you are gaining from the relationship. You get more resources to help people, and they are partnering with you because they want people to have healthy food, but they need an intermediary to teach them how to cook it, to find somebody to do. And that's, you need to know why, because if you don't know why, you start collaborating with people that don't really help your mission. That was so, you taught the whole slide, my friend. you are on it, because it gives. I lost. Is it me? Oh, I think I'm back. Okay. Does something moved? I think I'm good. I think it just had a moment. So this might be space, it might be equipment, it might be consumable resources to better use the service for your clients. You need to understand the values that you bring to the table. Your ministry is built on values. Do you know the values that you are operating from? And can you articulate those values? If somebody does, you tell me, otherwise I'm going to give samples. It could be compassion, it could be dignity. You want people to have dignity. It could be a value of service. It could be quality, dependability. These are, that's a good one too, because these are going to drive who you collaborate with. They're the foundation for your ministry. They drive your motivation and your decisions. So say you are approached by an organization that you don't think is dependable. Are you going to collaborate with them if that is really important to your ministry? So we do this, but it really helps if you can articulate it. If we want compassion and somebody else wants recognition, is it a good space to be in? Is this the place we need to be? And then we need to know our limits, because the possible collaborations are limitless, and you will get stretched very thin. You will get stretched very thin. So know how much you can commit to these relationships before you start just taking on other people's mission. That you have a mission and you need to protect that, and collaboration should be mutually beneficial. So how do you identify your partners? You're looking at what population do you serve? Know who you serve, know the demographics. Is it single parents? If it's single parents, moms or dads? Is it veterans? Is it returning citizens? Is it children removed from their homes? Is it immigrants? If it's immigrants, from where? Because these are all going to define who you can work with. Is it unhoused individuals? Is it families, men, women, senior citizens who are living unhoused? Because each of these groups has different needs. So looking at who is worried about those people.
Just to add,
Yes.
I remember at some point we were called in and trained to deal with people who are on welfare. And we were given a computer and given access to the, social services so that we could have served these people well. But people have different ways of getting through life. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's by the truth, and sometimes it's by lying. And what happens is that once you keep pursuing it, because we are looking to help every avenue. We worked with the seniors, and we have some city members, councillors, who actually would work side by side with you based on your location where you are. So if we have 3 or 4 senior citizen homes here, they would actually start providing certain things, bus rides, going to Atlantic City, and whatever else. So we want to be a part of that because we want to serve, regardless as to where, but with the principle that we are still Seventh-day Adventists, because that's what we want to project.
Yeah.
So we had that coming in many, many times. We had other formations where people will actually say, we know what you're doing, and we want to partner with you in getting it done. Sometimes that might be for the praise and the glory, the numbers and what have you. But our purpose was still helping wherever the necessity was. And that's how we move from one phase to the other. We have never really get into children. And I must say, once we were given an opportunity to serve in this neighborhood, serving people who were living in a sheltered system. And they actually approached us and said, we would give you up to $1 million to serve the people that live in these 2 shelters. But we didn't do it. Don't ask me why, I don't know. The church didn't accept it.
Okay.
They thought that we were a little too ambitious.
But
the idea is we did have brand Sabbath school with them every Sabbath.
Okay.
We did what we could.
There you go. So we're looking at the know your limits.
That's right.
Know your limits. Because it's a beautiful idea, isn't it?
To me, it is.
It is. And it's good to have a little bit of vision beyond what you can do. Because when the opportunity comes, if you're not a little bit frustrated by wanting to do something new, then when the opportunity comes, you're not going to recognize it. And it's going to go by you. So dream a little beyond where you are and be thinking of that and constantly exploring. So when God opens the door, you're ready to go through. I think that happened in COVID, that a lot of places just said, oh, I guess we can't do anything. And they weren't ready for the opportunities that came with that situation, and ready to just, if you know your mission, you can be flexible within that mission and open new doors and new avenues. So always, I know, it's frustrating. It's like, why didn't we do it? But for whatever reason, it wasn't there. Ask also, what needs do the people you serve have that you cannot help with? So that's what they were looking at. We can't provide spiritual care for the people living in our shelter. We'll go to the church. But what needs do you see that you can't help? And can we also reach out to people? Which you are doing it, but just to reiterate how these work. Who else cares about them? So you're looking at who you serve, what do they need, and who else cares about this population. And that's where you're going to find the people that will partner with you in a positive way, and where both of your missions need to be benefited, because collaboration is for the benefit of both groups. They should be win-win situations for everybody involved, the two organizations or more, as well as the people that you serve. So you're looking, when you have an organization in mind, then you're looking at those pieces of the population, the goals, the strategies, priorities, values. Who are they? Who are we? And then where do we overlap? You are probably not going to be on top. Your circles are not going to go over the top of each other. If you do, then you're just redundant. You're doing the same exact thing, but where do you overlap enough to say, we care about these children, you're the school, you care about children, and there's some needs there that aren't being met. Can we work together towards doing this? So who, you've named some that you can partner with. Are there others? I think we had an allusion to one of just even the other ministries within our church, that we can work together to do different pieces. Other churches, other nonprofits, government agencies. I think these are some that you were mentioning, that these are all potential partners to continue to expand what we're able to do for people. And the key really is just to know, what change do you want to see out of this partnership? If you cannot define that, you're going to get pulled into some weird spaces. And if you need an example of that, I had an ACS center, and they typically were providing clothing and some emergency food and utility rent help. So they had some money in their bank account that they would help people if they're in trouble. And then there was a new board member who didn't seem to quite understand what the center did. And he was in town and saw a pizza restaurant that was going to serve pizza to homeless people for a day. And he's like, hey, they're helping people. So he convinced others to take money out of their account that goes for utilities and rent to provide a donation for a pizza parlor to provide pizza for a couple hours. This is where this came from. So let me visit the board and talk about what is a collaboration. So you're looking at some of the same people. You have very different goals, very different strategies, very different priorities. So it's probably not the collaboration. So there's some intuitive places that we say, no, that doesn't work. But sometimes intuition isn't enough. It's not enough. We need to be able to think through and be intentional in what we're doing. And the last piece on this is...
Before we go to the last piece,
yes.
Sometimes I think we as ACS, more or less in all our churches, we tend to cling to one thing. Mm-hmm. We believe that we are good at giving out food, and we all want to give out food. When there are so many other areas of need. And personally, and I could speak for maybe Brooklyn North, as I said, we have about 11 churches in Brooklyn North. And if we all do the same thing, we overlap and fulfill nothing, because the people that we work with are smarter than we are.
Yes, they are. Yes,
and they would recognize times and spaces. So the same ones that may be served at one church will be served at the next church, will be served at the next church. Mm-hmm. Whereas if we specialize in different areas of fulfilling what ACS is all about, then we will have specialists in different locations, still covering all that is necessary so that we can do the best good. And for example, I remember when the first 400 men came into Brooklyn, and they were sitting right in front of South Brooklyn Church. South Brooklyn Church was not an active ACS operator. And they had to appeal to different churches to assist them in getting the job done. So sometimes we had to give them food, and it's all male. They needed men's clothing. And if anybody who is in ACS knows the hardest type of clothing to find is men's clothing. So we had to actually buy stuff. But the purpose in mind was to give it. But the overall purpose is to bring them into the salvation of Jesus Christ. So we represent him.
Yeah.
How do we do that? We have a bilingual problem. We are English speaking most of the time. They are Spanish speaking. We have to adapt. We have to find people now, as I was saying, we learn now to go on the phone.
Translator.
And translate what the people are saying, so that we could give the service to them.
Yes.
And, then you recognize some of them are Adventists. Some of them came in. We didn't expect Adventists to be coming, but some of them are. Some of them would love to be. Does our work end there with just giving them food and giving them a pants and a shoe? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is where the whole church should become involved, where we can touch them and scratch where they itch and apply where the pain is, so that we can at least, I don't know if we can stop it, but at least we can slow it down.
Because if you, I went back to this slide, because if you think about your sister churches, especially Adventist churches, but any church, but think about your sister Adventist churches as another partner. And if you're doing the same things for the same people, you're redundant. You're redundant. And if they were partnering and you provide food and they provide something different and somebody else provides, how much more powerful that becomes. That the Adventist church will walk somebody who's coming into this country with food, clothes, education, language skills, job skills, and get them on their feet and ready to go. That witness is very different than what you're talking about to people outside, to them, to the people who came for help, as well as to people in your community who are saying, oh my goodness, look at those people. You did something, but yeah, working together can be harder. It can be a lot harder in the church. We're not always willing to work together, but there is plenty for everybody if we work together. Another, and you actually lead into this next section of being informed, of ministering from a place where you have understanding of the issues and what is happening. And there's a few components. Some of this slide is pretty basic, especially if you're starting something new, but sometimes when you've been doing it a while, we just are operating on autopilot. So we need to understand the community. We do that through a demographic study. You can look that up in a lot of different ways. Wikipedia, there's services that will just give you pure demographic information on a group. And the problem with demographics that I have is that sometimes we're a little too intellectual with our community. And they're actual people, and people are much more complex than numbers and data. So you may get a very broad view of what's happening, but you living on the ground, you know it's much more. You can have a median income. I think this area, your zip code, is about $133,000 a year median. So where are all your people coming from?
It's interesting. The answer to that question is all over.
There you go.
Every borough. We have people from Manhattan, from the Bronx, from Queens, from Staten Island, and they come here. I don't know how they get here, but they come here.
But they find their way because they know where there's help. And the problem then is people will see that and say, well, nobody here needs help. But then it's the median. So you have someone up here and someone down here, and this is right in the middle. So there is still something more going on, and you're seeing that, and they're coming and they're finding you. So it gives you a snapshot, but it's kind of a bird's eye view, and the bird is way up in the air. It needs to come down to the ground and see what the worms are actually up to. So you conduct a windshield survey. You're probably not as windshield oriented here because you may not have as many vehicles, but it's just going through the area you intend to serve on foot, in car, and just looking through. It's named that because you're looking out of your windshield and just observing, just looking at what's happening. Where are people? Where are they congregating? What types of interests do you see? Are there a lot of children's toys? Are there a lot of what do you see in a neighborhood? So this is just getting to know your neighborhood. You're interviewing key leaders, which you do talk to leaders. Sometimes they change, though, and sometimes we need to revisit some of these strategies. So these could be government officials. It could be businesses, nonprofits, schools, anybody that you think you're going to make a lot of relationships in this. And it's really good to remember that our ministry isn't just to the people in need, it's to our partners as well. That you're meeting people in government halls, you're meeting people in other nonprofits, and it's just good to mingle. Ministry is about relationships, so we're building relationships, kind of a 360-degree ministry. And you just take notes. Just take notes of what people say, listen to what they say, as well as what they don't say. Because if they don't know you well, they're going to measure their words. And then just talking to people on the street, and they're visiting homes, the people who come, and just getting to know your community. Here's some sample questions that you could ask. What do you love about this community? What a question to be asked. What challenges do you see? Why do you think this is happening? Because if you keep addressing the symptom, you're not going to get far. But why is it happening? I love the question, why? Why is it happening? If that's what's happening, why is that? Ask three whys. When somebody answers a question, ask another why. Why is that? And then when they answer that, once you get to that second and third and fourth why, you really start to get down into things. In Sabbath school, people answer a question, why is that true? Always, always, why? Brad loves it. He loves it when I do that. Sorry. But it's a powerful place. You start to actually see people and their hearts when you dig a little bit deeper. What innovative solutions have you seen? People, especially like our city council, some of those people, they see what everybody is doing. What have they seen that's working? What do you wish you could do for the people you serve that is not happening? So sometimes that's a place to start to intersect. And this is a really asset-based community development. Have you heard of this? This is kind of a new trend in how we approach the community, how we approach service. And part of that was in the questions, what are you good at? Sometimes as churches, we are looking for needs. We're looking for need. What do you need? And this flips that to say, what are you good at? It's like taking a glass with some water in it, and we're looking at where there's no water. This is starting by looking at what is there, what is good, what are the skills. Like you say, there were Adventists in the group. And that's a place to start and build on, where if you don't ask questions and you don't get to know people, you want to identify and mobilize the capabilities, the skills, and the resources of the individual or community. Are there resources and solutions already there? And you're going to seek to build and rebuild the relationships among local individuals, associations, churches, schools, etc. Sometimes it's just a disconnect that's happened between different groups, and when we pull them back together and get the kind of join their hands back together, that can strengthen the community too. A lot of the people, especially if they're coming in, we don't understand the values that they bring with them, the education levels. You could be giving a food box to a doctor, and we don't know it. So we need to ask, what do you have? What is already there? And then only bring in outside resources when local resources are insufficient to solve pressing needs. And I'm going to let that sit, because that is a key point there. Because when we keep giving them what they already have the ability to do, we're undermining that ability. So it starts to degrade what they can do for themselves. It starts to degrade their own ability, their own confidence to take care of themselves. Sometimes sufficiency, independence is a little bit like a muscle, and they need to be able to use it where they're able to use it in order to grow. So we want to make sure. So is helping being helpful? So some say generosity may not be helpful, and that is not intuitive to us, and I think mine are out of order. So much of charitable giving is either wasted or actually harms the people it is targeted to help. When we do for those in need what they have the capacity to do for themselves, we disempower them. We disempower them. So giving to those in need what they could be gaining from their own initiative may well be the kindest way to destroy people. So when we are doing ACS, we need to make sure that we are discerning about what people can do for themselves and which barriers are too high for them to overcome. Because there's plenty of those too. And frankly, we all have them. There's trying to learn math. Oh my goodness, it's been a long time since I've done math. So I need a little help. And I have signed up for a class. So we need to have discernment. We're all in this boat. Where are they stuck? And how can we help them over those places and let them continue to take care of what they know? And some of these, and this next section are from the book Toxic Charity, Bob Lupton. And the nice thing that I learned from Bob Lupton was that his organization only goes into a neighborhood when they're invited. I thought, oh, what would we do different if we only went where we were invited? How would we treat people? How would we treat them as a community? And what would that look like? So this is from when we don't do that. I think you'll see some of that reflected here. This is from a blog that was put out in 2005. And the man just wrote a blog about his experiences of being poor. What did it mean in his life? And then these are from the comments. Thousands and thousands of people commented back what being poor meant to them. So being poor means having your life gone over with a fine-tooth comb to see if you're bad enough to help. Being poor is people surprised to discover you're not actually lazy. Being poor is getting tired of people wanting you to be grateful. Being poor is spending money you know you don't have on a candy bar because you need something to cheer yourself up enough to get out of bed. And most of us recognize that. But I think we've also seen a lot of judgment around stuff like that. Being poor is finding that your landlord has tied $20 to your steering wheel out of pity. And sometimes in classes people say, but we needed to give it to them. But look at how it's being received. It doesn't feel good. It's not uplifting. Being poor is having your best friend's mother compliment her for hanging out with you because it shows good moral fiber, don't you know? And being poor is knowing firsthand the terror of Upton Sinclair's summarized in The Jungle, feeling, being abandoned by God and man. So these are some of the reactions to typical charity work and to living in poverty. And so we want people to have a more uplifting experience when they come into our spaces. If we do not do, if we're not looking at using the right, a lot of this comes down to using the right strategy in the right circumstance. When we talk about asset-based development work, and when we look at undermining what people do. It's just the simplest little things can change everything in the dynamics. So need-based relationships, you need to need something for you to come here. Relationships built on need do not reduce need. Rather, they require more need to continue. When one problem is solved, another must be presented in order for the relationship to continue. Ministry is relationships. What kind of relationship do we want? Learning to trust and to be trustworthy is the foundation upon which a good community flourishes. If we get into those need-based relationships, though, what the giver expects, I mean, these are normal too. It's not bad if you do this, because this is normal. In a need-based relationship, the recipient we expect that the recipient will use the assistance to better themselves. I mean, we do. We didn't give it just to give it. We would like something good to happen in their lives. The giver expects that the recipient will exert honest effort to regain self-reliance after a misfortune. No one wants to support irresponsibility or create dependency or feel used. The giver expects the recipient to give full disclosure. Lack of full disclosure introduces suspicion and mistrust. So now the recipient, and you know it's happening. They went from one church to the next, and it's frustrating. So the recipient starts to feel controlled by the strings attached to the giver, and the giver feels deceived by the recipient's lack of candor. Does this resonate with you? I mean, this is what we face a lot. And this is what these thought leaders are saying is, where is this coming from and how do we break this cycle? Of the recipient feeling controlled? Well, he gave an example earlier where they are coming to one church, and you know that they're going to get food, but they know the schedule, so they're going to the next church to get food too. And then they go to the next church, and they go to the next church, and they're using all of the resources. Where we're intending that we're giving you a box of food every so many periods of time, where they're kind of working the system. Have you ever heard people say they're working the system? Anytime you say that, this is what's happening. This is what happens. We had a clothing bank. How many restrictions in a clothing bank can you put on? Every time we're doing restrictions in our policies to say, well, you can only have, they came in and got coats, but I know they don't have 10 people in their coat, in their family. They don't need all those coats. So then we start saying, well, you can only have 3 coats. Well, you can only do this. Well, you can only do that. And you're starting to get into this dynamic of trying to control behavior rather than changing the dynamic of the whole ministry. So an example of that, and the next class that I had was on thrift stores, if we get there, is you go from giving it free to just very, very affordable. And suddenly you change that dynamic of saying you don't need to restrict how many coats they take, because you marked it at a fair price, and you just let them shop and do what they want. And you start to get into a different type of relationship. So it's not need-based anymore. They're coming in as just a customer.
I think sometimes we would have to, we may know the person. I remember a lady came in and took 3,500 pieces of clothing. Now, in my mind, she has a business. She has a business. And when they come and they give you all the basic name brands that would do a better sale, you should not be fooled. You know it's not going to Haiti and it's not going to Trinidad. It's going to some little boutique somewhere.
Yes,
Or thrift
consignment
shop,
shop
as
or a
was
thrift,
stated.
there you go. Or they're
So
opening their own thrift shop.
we would have defeated the purpose of what we are doing, trying to cover need. And we have a saying, it's need or greed. And basically, most times, it's greed.
It is. I'm gonna, when something's offered for free, I've never seen any of us turn it down. You should see us at conventions, and we got free pens out, and people are just grabbing those pens, and they're grabbing it from the next table and we don't need this many pens in our lives. How many of us have a drawer full of pens, but we see a free pen and we take it? This is just human nature, to take something when it's free. And I remember, I very distinctly remember in college we went on a tour of the Hanford Nuclear Reservation, and at the end they had little cards with a tiny piece of spent rod from the nuclear plant, kind of shrink wrapped in there as a gift on your way out. And everyone's just taking them, and one person said, "No, I don't need that." And I thought, oh, he doesn't, does he? I may not either. And it's a mindset that we just take what's free. So when we give it free and they take it with that attitude, we need to understand that this is what we are building. It's because of how we developed our ministries and how we have structured them. So if we want people to act different, then a shift in what we do is what that is going to require. To just take it in a little bit different area, and it will change. Your relationships are not, well, let me see, I might say it, so let me see if I say it. So we have the recipient, so this is what the recipients do. They must figure out the rules of the system. How do I get things out of these people? Recipient must determine the kind of appeal most likely to secure the maximum benefit. At the conference office, I'd get calls. I used to be a 7-day Adventist. I'm like, I don't think you were if you call us that. But I don't care. They're trying to figure out, what do you want to hear? You know, my kids do eat meat, and I'm sorry about that. It's like, it's fine. It's fine. But they're trying to figure out, how do I get you to give me something? The recipient must learn the language that best matches the dispenser's values. And above all, they have to be sincere. Is that sincere anymore? If they've got to figure out how to be sincere. And then suddenly half-truths become acceptable and fabrication may be necessary because it's about working the system. So we're actually encouraging a system where people need to not be truthful. And givers must continually tighten the rules and close loopholes and detect manipulation and fraud. And this system breeds an adversarial relationship. And it breeds resentment rather than trust. And you see it, don't you? You see it.
I can give you an experience. A young man came, we were over the street, and he wanted, and we were pretty generous, he wanted 2 bags of food. That time we used to put them in bags. And we gave him the 2 sets of food. He said he has it for 2 neighbors. And he was going at that time to Long Island University, right here, the one in Brooklyn. And something told me, you need to walk behind him. And I took him, he walked through the park. And when he recognized that I was behind him, he went and knocked on the neighbor's door and said, I brought you the meal. She said, I didn't ask you for anything. He said, you forget that already? Yeah. So I know he was scheming, but then I should have thought, because on his breath I smelled alcohol. Oh. So I don't know if it was a sale for some benefit. Oh. And from that day, I normally would say, just walk with them. Some of them sell it right at the corner here. But when they recognize that you are behind them, it changes or they stop coming. But I was taught that if we persist in giving people food in 10, 12 years, we have done nothing for them.
Yeah.
It's just a habit.
It's just, yes, yes. And that's when we need to start thinking, well, how do we do it? Yes, ma'am.
With the examples that you are giving, you are also putting in the thrift store model that you will have a chance to talk about. So I wonder, this is just a thought, if they're that closely related and joined together, what is the next step? What is the next step? If that they're so close, it's so close to getting a thrift store. What is it that many of us are missing, and why do we not hit the mark when we go out into the business format?
Wait. If what is so close? Make sure. Like to change our models or just a thrift store?
The model is seems very close for a thrift store. But
Yes.
that being said, many of us may do all this and still fail.
That's true.
So what is the guarantee, I guess? Maybe
There's no guarantees in ministry. People still have choice. If I'm understanding it right, people still have choice. Some other examples that I've seen of this, they may have done a food co-op. You have other restrictions on you with food from your sources too, so it doesn't always work, but they may give to those that you know are on disability, unemployed. I mean, you know your people, so you know these people just need to be given some food right now because it really is a crisis. But other people, they had them pay like $5 a month. They come in, the food comes like today. They meet the truck as a group. They were put into groups, and they packed their boxes, laid the banana boxes down. They packed everyone's boxes. They had a little community meeting, maybe a devotional, just depending what that particular group did. And then they went home. So they contributed something. A homeless shelter may require some chores that we're all in this together. We don't just provide it for you. So it can be very little things that just say, there's something here. You do need to, we used to do a lot of work, like go mow the lawn, which, may not be your problem. It's problems other places. But you mow the lawn and you do that, but then you get into some employment. So I'm not talking about some of that because you're essentially giving goods for service.
Right.
And you need to be careful about that too. But there are some models that just say you're here, we're working together, and working for you together. We're not doing it for you, we're doing it with you. And so it takes some creativity. It probably takes a little bit of research to see what other people are doing and what fits you and what you're doing and your space and the regulations that you're operating under. Because food banks have a lot of regulations. And so it doesn't always work, but when you're creating new models too, you can do this. So there's books. I'm trying to think if When Helping Hurts and Toxic Charity, they have examples, and they have a lot of tools for walking through. When Helping Hurts is a little bit bigger and it has more support in it. Toxic Charity just kind of lays it out to say this is what's happening. It's not a simple fix. It's so close to what we're doing that it's an incremental change can make a big difference. But it's a different mindset on our part, and that's hard. But I think you're saying some of it. So how do we just shift this a little bit? And it's something I think all of nonprofits are learning right now. This is a lot of the discussion of how do we do this different. A lot of it starts from that mindset of what is right and building on what's right. So we can be providing food, but what are we doing in their lives? Are they a good cook? Can we start giving them business skills and start to move them into self-sufficiency? Can we start using some other strategies alongside this to say, let's move you forward and get you out of this, rather than just cycling in one spot? Did we go through these? Yes, adversarial. So we ask, how do we improve? So here's some questions. Does the proposed activity strengthen the capacity of the neighborhood residents to prioritize and address their own issues? Do they have a say in what's happening and what can do? Will the proposed activity be wealth generating or at least self-sustaining? That changes the dynamic. Will the monies generated by the local residents remain at work in their community? And you're serving people from everywhere, so it can be a little bit, but sometimes a lot of wealth is taken out of low-income neighborhoods, especially if there's incarceration. Those are the numbers in my head, like 1.9, no, it's more than that if you add them together. It's a couple $1 billion. We know that there's $1 million blocks where over $1 million is spent in incarceration on a single block, city block. And because incarceration's so expensive, it can even be up to $5 million on one city block. So this is more than any social services that are spent on that block. And these are typically, I think we know that the people who are being incarcerated are disproportionately low income and undereducated and other issues. So you're looking at neighborhoods that are already low income, but when your loved one is incarcerated, they're sending them money. So over $2.something billion is spent in commissaries and phone calls to loved ones. So you're just stripping these neighborhoods of even more wealth. So how can we bring wealth back to the community so they have a more vibrant space to live? And does the proposed activity have a timetable for training and transferring ownership? There you go. Is there a timetable, or is it 3 generations down the road that you're still doing the same thing? And you may be doing the same thing, but is it different people and to indigenous people? So we want people to own their own lives. So are the people of that community able to take leadership? And you do have a lot of leadership within a community. So when we come in and do that for them and lead for them, we're taking away those people's ability. There's always somebody who knows everybody in a neighborhood, and they have a lot of influence that can be used. A good posture will never do for the poor what they have or could have the capacity to do for themselves, and it will limit one-way giving to emergency situations. And they have identified a dependency progression. If you give once, you elicit appreciation. People are appreciative. Twice, and you can start to create some anticipation. Hey, they give this out. 3 times, and you start to create expectation. 4 times becomes some entitlement, and then 5 times. We say dependency. I would say that they're saying, they're going to do it for me, why do I bother? Would be another way to look at that. A good posture will strive to empower the poor through employment, lending, and investment. Subordinate self-interest to the needs of those being served. And a good posture will listen closely to those you seek to help, especially to what is not being said. Unspoken feelings may contain essential clues to essential service, to effective service, because we have been in that adversarial relationship as nonprofits, not just churches. Nonprofits are in an adversarial relationship with people. So they're not going to say, they're trying to say what they think you want to hear. So you have to be more discerning to break down those barriers to hear what's not being said. You are probably not going to get honest, straightforward answers. And above all, do no harm. Every change has consequences. Every change has consequences. So even when you do some of the change, if you adjust what you're doing, it can be a little bit of an experiment, and to remember that we're always constantly learning, we're always constantly trying new things and seeing what is coming and what we can do. So we all need as much grace as anybody when we do things and we say, oh, that may not be quite what I meant. To see their reactions, this may not be it. So that's just a process. That's very normal, and I hope you normalize learning and normalize some of those pieces where we just allow ourselves to say, oh, that didn't work. Let me do this. It's not a failure. It's not failure. Or normalize failure if it feels like a failure to you. All right. Any questions, or do we need to transition?
Any questions? I have a mic. Anybody have a question?
I don't have a question. I have an observation.
You take that.
You give it.
Going back to your description of dependency / giving, I saw something on television this week that really opened up
Sure.
my mind. A former canner was one who walks around, pick up bottles and cans in New York. He didn't like the idea of dependency. He didn't like the idea of this constant giving. He turned that around. He created a nonprofit. And we see the canners around New York and we think they're all nuisances. You know, they pull the garbage out just to extract the bottles and cans. But when I heard the money that the canners are making, I was shocked. And underneath that, they all said the same thing. It makes them independent. It provides for their families. And the biggie, it goes to the environmental question in New York, where they're consistently helping to clean the city up. And all that refuse is sent to South Brooklyn, where New York City has one of the largest recycling plants in the USA, right there in South Brooklyn. And the compost is 1 million pounds annually. So New York creates a lot of garbage. That garbage is now being made into money. And help creating that money effect are the canners. So I will no longer see them as nuisances. I see them as independent,
Yes.
not entrepreneurs, and simply knowing that the basic rule of life, as God said, you really have to work. He said, by the sweat of your brow, you must work. He never said being dependent
Yes.
is how you survive.
Yeah.
So I tip my hat off to the canners.
There you go.
And that goes back to what you were
Something
saying.
like that. I like
Goodbye.
Thanks, you had
No,
that for us.
it's just a beautiful example of opening an opportunity for people that seems like such a simple, not our usual way of thinking of making a living, but somebody just said, hey, to create the path for somebody is huge, And then there are people who will take those and be more independent. That's an interesting one. That's beautiful. All right, we're going to close then. Was there another one? No, I didn't. Okay, we're good then. I will turn it back to you.
Hi. We just want to give a round of applause to Sister Sister Colette Newer. Please, can we? Okay, at this time, I would like to bring up Reverend Dr. Lula Mae Phillips and Dr. Balmoth. And they're both from Cornell Weill University. And they're going to be dealing with NORCON training. They have some goodies for us.
Good afternoon.
It is a great delight to be here with you this afternoon. What we're going, and I will be clear, we are from Weill Cornell Medicine, Clinical Translational Science Center, which is the research arm of Weill Cornell Medicine. During the COVID epidemic, there was much talk about research and what research could do and what it couldn't do, and there was loads and loads of rumors. So I'm going to give you a commercial right now. Everyone who's interested in learning more about research, I have developed a program which is called the Community Research Academy, and if any of you are interested, the classes are free. They're once a week on a Wednesday in the afternoon from like 1 to about 2:30 or 2:15. But you can also take the classes independently. And you can do that in the evening because with every session there are questions and answers, and you could do the questions and answers. It's approximately 12 sessions. And at the end of the session, you will receive a certificate of completion. But it's extremely informative, so if any of you are interested in research, that's my research plug. However, today, what we're going to be talking about is the opioid epidemic, which is a crisis in this country. And so many people will often say, well, you know what, it just didn't show up. No, it's been around for quite some time. But currently, it's affecting many, many more people. And a lot of you may not be interested in naloxone or Narcan, but opioids, drug addiction impacts us all in so many ways. And it's going to get worse, not better. Currently, it's really, really extremely big problem. With me today is Evan Balmuth, and he is an MD, PhD student at Weill Cornell Medicine. And his interest is internal medicine. He's almost finished with all of his regs and all of the schooling. And so it's internal medicine and addiction medicine. And I want you to know addiction medicine is growing. You can no longer just go to your primary care provider and ask, what do you think? What should I do? It's becoming an area of great specialty because the needs are enormous. I was on the subway last week coming home, and I've been teaching about naloxone and the opioid crisis for quite a couple of years now. And usually I carry my naloxone kit with me. And this particular day I didn't have it. And on the subway was this man, and he was about 40. And his wife, she was about 40. She was crying and in tears, and the guy was plastered laying on the subway platform. And you could see plainly he was addicted, but he was still breathing. And I said, you know what? I always carry it. Today's the day that someone needed it, and I didn't have it. So I had the audacity to ask everyone on the platform. It was about 5,000 people on the platform. I said, does anyone here have a naloxone kit? No one had a kit. Not one person. And they kept telling me, we just called, don't worry, we just called 911, so someone is coming. And someone did come because it just so happens it was at 14th Street in Union Square, and the police department is there, so they were very efficient and effective. However, my responsibility, I was negligent. So I'm hoping after this presentation, all of you will not be found guilty like I was. So I'm going to have Evan, he will give you the presentation. I want you to feel free to ask questions. The other thing is, historically, your denomination, now I'm a minister as well, I'm Protestant, Baptist, I have a children's ministry. Your denomination, currently you do not have issues historically with drugs. You don't have them. You may have other issues, but you don't have that. We all have concerns, issues. That's what we call life. However, the one thing I want to say is the concern is not so much for the people in the room. The concern is for the people who are outside of the room. The concern are for the people who are struggling. And for whatever reasons, sometimes in life, what I struggle with, you do not struggle with. Currently, mental health issues in this country, we're at a crisis. And one of the big reasons, in my opinion, that we are in crisis is that the element of fellowship that comes from our faith is being diminished in so many ways. So our children are under attack. When you have a 6-year-old child talking about suicide, what do they know? And you think that just because they are sitting next to you in service, they get it. But that's not necessarily the case. One of the things that I think is important is family time, and I don't mean where you have your remote or you have your cell phone and we're sitting next to each other. I've seen people go on dates and they text each other, and I said, what kind of date is that? What do you want to eat? Come on, give me a break. Or you have children who come home from school. They're not met with a person. Everything is programmed. The computer cuts on, the lights cut on. Hi, honey, I'll be home in a minute. Everything is so technical. Everything is media. We have forgotten the most important element that we have is human. It's face to face. And it's not money. You can have all the money in the world and have an empty house with an empty heart, and it has absolutely no meaning. So if we don't put life, living, each other, and our faith back to work, we're done. We might as well just pack it up and just lay down and just have them push us all over. But you and I have the ability to change that. I'm going to say one more thing. And that is, I was at a food pantry in the Bronx. And a lot of people at the food pantry, they would quickly, easily tell you, I don't have problems in my family. My family does not have a drug problem. No one in my family has a drug problem. And sometimes that is the case. Sometimes, however, people are embarrassed because they may have someone in their family who has drug issues. I'll tell you, I had a cousin that was chopped up into about 50 pieces. He was on drugs, and he became schizophrenic, and he had a lot of mental issues, but his mind just flipped, and he just went off, and people chopped him up and killed him. And so I'll tell you, was it something planned? No. Was it something that the family was anticipating? No. However, this is what I want everyone to know. You don't have to have anyone in your family on drugs, but your neighbor might be on drugs. So what happened at the food pantry, I'm getting back to my original story, is that the woman said, oh, no one in my family's on drugs. No, 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 no. So they said, listen, take a kit anyway. You don't know. That night, someone came knocking at her door, and the lady described to her husband's condition. So she gave him a kit and said, take this. You might need it. It might work. And it brought the man back to life. And the woman was so happy because she brought someone back to life. So I want you to just think about it. Now, the next voice you're going to hear is Evan Belmuth.
Hi, my name is Evan. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for having me here, and I'm really honored to speak with you today. So I'm here to talk a little bit about opioids, the opioid epidemic, which you may have heard about. Many of you may be directly affected by this. And what we're going to get to is what everyone here can do to help someone who you love, someone who you don't know in your community, whether it be a neighbor or a stranger. We are going to give you some information and also a training afterwards. Everybody who wants one is going to get one of these Narcan kits, which gives you the ability to save somebody's life from an overdose. So something very powerful, and really appreciate your listening today. So, let's see. So when we give this presentation, we start with a somewhat disturbing image. This is an image of an overdose, somebody who is overdosed on an opioid. So I just want to ask, could someone tell me what is an opioid? What is an opioid? Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. It's a drug. It's a painkiller drug. And what's an overdose? Too much. Yeah. All right. So I guess I don't need to teach you as much as I thought. This individual took something, whether it be a prescribed medication, an opioid, or another medication that maybe had an opioid in it that they weren't aware of, and their body, as you said, was overpowered by this excess of medication. And I'll talk a little bit more about exactly what happens in the body, but before getting into numbers and details, we like to start with kind of an image to represent what we're talking about here. Okay, so you already gave me an answer to this. Opioids are a class of drugs, and you may have heard of several of them. So there are some that are prescribed by doctors, and there are some that people obtain on the street and use recreationally. So examples of some opioid painkillers that you can get from a doctor include OxyContin, Vicodin, Percocet, morphine. You may have heard of these. You may have taken them yourself for pain. And then there are some medication or some opioids that are not prescribed but used only recreationally, like heroin. And then there's one type of opioid in particular that is really driving the epidemic that we have today, which is called fentanyl, which is a medication doctors prescribe for very severe pain, usually in the setting of cancer. And I know I've had patients who have needed fentanyl patches to manage their pain. However, this very powerful opioid has found its way into the street drug supply, and it's so potent and powerful it can be lethal in microscopic doses, and I have an image to represent that, which I'll show you as well. So you already told me a little bit what opioids do. The prescription opioids are painkillers. They're very powerful painkillers, but they can also cause people to feel euphoric, feel happy, high. They can also cause people to become sleepy, and this kind of leads down the path to overdose in some cases. But primarily, these came about to treat severe pain. However, these medications can also become addictive very quickly. And so one thing I want to emphasize in this talk is that when we get to talking about overdoses, people dying from taking too much of an opioid, this is something that can actually affect anybody, not just people who have been using drugs or using opioids for a long time or misusing prescribed medications, but this can happen accidentally to someone who tries a new medication or a new pill from the street for the first time. Oftentimes it starts with a prescription that can lead to an addiction. And then what happens when people are taking medications for a prolonged period of time, opioids specifically, is that you'll need more of the same drug to get the same pain-killing effect. So this leads to higher and higher doses, and we call that tolerance, needing more of the same amount of the drug to get the same pain relief, or for people who are taking it to get high, then needing more of the dose to get high as well. So part of the reason it's so difficult to stop using, and I know many people in the audience here may know people directly affected by this, so I may be preaching to the choir, so to say. But withdrawal is part of what makes this so challenging. So there are all kinds of symptoms if someone were to stop taking an opioid that they are having an addiction to. So nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and also psychological symptoms like depression, and cravings for drugs. And these are the symptoms that really drive people to start using again, to obtain more of the medication or the heroin or whatever it is that they're taking, even if they're trying to stop. And oftentimes when someone has stopped using for a prolonged period and then returned to using, that can be especially dangerous because the tolerance goes down, and then the same dose that they return to afterwards can be lethal when before it was just enough to get that pain relief. So this is an image I think is really powerful. I mentioned different types of opioids. There's heroin, which is a very common recreational opioid, oftentimes injected into a vein. And this image shows the lethal dose, so the amount of each drug that it would take to kill somebody in an overdose. And you can see just how potent fentanyl is. Just those little specks together are deadly. And it shows you the equivalent deadly dose of heroin. So this is to give an idea of how dangerous fentanyl really is. And it's really everywhere now in the street drug supply. So this is one of the things that I find most scary about the epidemic that we have right now. Is I alluded to this earlier, that a fentanyl or opioid overdose can happen to anybody, even someone who's never thought that they've taken an opioid in their life. So there are all kinds of pills that you can get on the street. This is an anxiety medication called Xanax, also prescribed by doctors, but it can also be bought on the street. And this is another addictive medication that sometimes can be used recreationally as well. So on the screen we have actual Xanax and fake Xanax. So if I saw these, I certainly wouldn't be able to tell them apart. And the difference is that the fake Xanax contains fentanyl in this case. And you saw just how little it takes for that to be a lethal dose. So you have people creating these fake pills, selling on the street, and someone can take this and have no idea that there's an opioid with a lethal dose inside. And this is how we're seeing many overdoses occur. Even in people who don't have an addiction, have not been taking pills for a long time. It could be a teenager who wants to experiment, try something new, or somebody who takes Adderall for concentration, buy it on the street, and it has a lethal dose of fentanyl in it. And this is how we're seeing a lot of people, especially young people, passing away from opioid overdoses. So this is just to emphasize that it's not just people who have an addiction. This could happen really to anybody. So I'm going to talk about some numbers now. These numbers are a little bit old, and I have some updated ones to share. So we've been talking about the epidemic of opioid overdoses. So this number on the screen actually is the total number of drug overdose deaths in 2017 was 72,000, and actually the number of opioid overdose deaths specifically was just over 47,000 in 2017, okay? And then the latest numbers we have are now 2021, and that number has actually gone up over 80,000. So this shows you how quickly this problem is worsening. 2017, so between 4 years, we saw the increase from 47,000 to 80,000 opioid overdose deaths. So this is more deaths than motor vehicle accidents and suicides combined, to give a comparison. We also know that men are 4 times as more likely to die of an overdose than women. And above all, we know that increasingly this is destroying communities. So again, some numbers here that I don't want to go through all of these. Sometimes numbers are helpful to convey the scope of this issue, but sometimes less so. So here, this is one number I'll highlight. So this was 2016, 116 opioid overdose deaths occurred per day in the US. As of 2021, that number is up to 220 overdose deaths a day. And now it's 2023, and we expect that those numbers are only going up. And this is also causing a great economic cost to our communities as well.
Are you also talking about vaping? I have someone online who's asking.
About vaping? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Vaping's a little bit different. So opioids can be taken many different ways. We're mainly talking about pills here, but like things like heroin can be injected into a vein, can be smoked as well. But vaping, yeah. So usually, like the vaping right now is like mainly commercial products, where they don't sell like opioid vaping products. So not something that we see as much. Yeah. Thank you for the question. So I've been talking about the scope of this issue nationally, but we like to try and bring it locally. And New York City really prioritizes this, recognizes the severity of this problem, and has done a lot of research to understand the scope here. And these numbers are, again, a little bit outdated, but, and I know it may be, the map's a little bit small, but you can see the darker shaded areas are the areas that have the highest rates of opioid overdose deaths. So you can see the hot spots being in Staten Island, up in the Bronx, and certain areas of Brooklyn. And today I looked at the updated map from 2021, and basically all over the map, everything is darker, largely in the same areas. Actually, I looked specifically at this part of Brooklyn, and it's actually in the higher range, so in that 22 to 30 per 100,000 residents. So there are certain areas where the problem seems to be worsening more quickly than others, and right here where we are is one of those areas. And again, I may be telling you something that you already know even better than I do, because odds are many people in here have been directly affected by this. Okay, so this is just a little question. I've been talking about prescription opioids. So for some context, the US population makes up about 5% of the world's population. So what percent of the world's supply of prescription opioids do we use? Let's see. Okay. Can I get a guess? Uh-huh. So it's actually 80%. Yeah, so this is, this could be a whole separate talk on its own, how prescription opioids worked their way into communities and really sparked this overdose epidemic that we have. And so I won't go into too much more detail about that, but this just gives you an idea of proportionally how many opioids we're using and are getting prescribed in the community. And I'm in medical school, and I have prescribed opioids to patients. There's an important role for them, but because they are so addictive, it really takes close monitoring to prescribe them safely. So it's part of what makes this really tricky. So soon I'm going to wrap up this talk, and I want to get into the training, which is really quick, and it's basically to show you what does an overdose look like. If you haven't seen one already, hopefully not. So how to recognize an overdose, and then how to actually reverse an overdose using Narcan. Basically a way that you can save somebody's life and give them another chance. Okay. So this is a little bit of a preview, but some images can be helpful here. So, but first, can someone tell me what happens when someone has an opioid overdose? I know I showed a picture, but what does an overdose look like? Actually, so with opioids, we actually see the pupils constrict. They become very small. You can see that, yep. If someone has really advanced brain damage, kind of like in a very severe stage, you can see kind of like one pupil start to dilate. But typically when one of the effects of opioids is actually what we call pinpoint pupils, really small. Yeah. And what else do we see with an opioid overdose? Yeah. Yeah, so we're talking about blue discoloration, and that indicates that the body's not getting, the organs are not getting enough oxygen. And that points to really the mechanism of how an opioid overdose kills people, is it stops the breathing. So breathing starts to slow down, people get very sleepy until the point that they are no longer breathing. And that's really what causes the overdose deaths.
I would just like to add, for people of color.
Thank you, I was gonna ask.
All right. For people of color, like myself, okay, when oxygen starts to leave the body, everybody turns blue. Blue. And the darker you are, the harder it is to see the blue sometimes. So if you are familiar with people of color, it's easy. So I can see it. But other people may not be able to see it. So this is what I want you to just consider, okay? The earlobes turn blue, okay? You could look at the back of the ears. You can pull the lower lip down and look at the bottom of the gum. Sometimes people have dark lips and dark gums, and you may be able to see it, okay? So it's not such a thing as you won't see it. You will see it, but you must take your time to see it. In other words, take your time to look.
Yeah, and this is an issue that's so often overlooked that, I can speak from my years in medical school that we often learn one appearance of a certain disease or an overdose, but often it can appear differently for people of different skin colors, and if we don't know how to recognize that, then that contributes to worse disparities and disease outcomes. So thank you for mentioning that. So what we recommend is if you're concerned that somebody's having an overdose, and there are many different signs or symptoms that can point to that. Looking kind of like under the gums, under the lips is another area that you can see this kind of blue discoloration. Also, in the whites of the eyes can turn blue as well, and the lips. So I'll go over this again in the training, but 911 is one of the most important steps of saving someone's life in an overdose, and this is for a few reasons. One of them is that if someone's having an opioid overdose, Narcan will reverse that and allow them to breathe again, but the appearance of an overdose looks very similar to somebody who had a heart attack maybe, or somebody who is intoxicated with alcohol. Oftentimes we're not sure exactly what it is, but Narcan is one way that could save a life if it is an opioid overdose. In any case, someone who's experiencing this, who's not breathing, is going to need a lot of medical attention. And something else that I want to mention is that Narcan only has a temporary effect. So it actually wears off and people can go back into their overdose. It's not kind of like a magic bullet, like a one-time fix. So when people get taken to the hospital after an overdose, and I've had patients in the intensive care unit in this situation, they actually get an IV line with a continuous drip of the same medication that you would be giving here. So it really is an intense need for medical attention. Oftentimes there's some fear associated with calling 911 for many deep-seated reasons. One particular reason is if there are drugs around, or you're calling to try and help somebody who is having an overdose, that fear that you might yourself get in trouble because you're around drugs, or you're with somebody who was using drugs, even if it was inadvertent. So I want to mention that in New York State, we have something called the Good Samaritan Law that protects people who call 911 to help somebody having an overdose, and it protects the person having the overdose as well. There can be plenty of reasons to be less inclined to call 911, but this is one reason that you wouldn't have to worry about in this situation, is getting in trouble for being around substances. Okay, and what we recommend is if you're calling 911 in this situation, to just say what you see. Somebody is not breathing, okay, because the truth is if you say, I think someone's having a drug overdose, there's a lot of stigma attached to that, and the reality is that responders might not come as quickly, whereas if all we know is somebody's not breathing, that's all we know, then the ambulance is going to arrive quickly and get them the medical attention that they need. Okay. And so this is just an overview of the training that I'll do shortly, the contents of the kit that you'll receive, which contains the Narcan. And yeah, I'll go through all of this in more detail. And then lastly, I just want to emphasize, Narcan is a medication that's life-saving, that's used in a life or death situation. And I mentioned that this can affect anybody, people who don't have addiction, people who are trying drugs for the first time, also people who have addiction who maybe have not used recently but returned to using a very high dose. So it really can happen to anybody. And so we want to talk about the treatment options that are available for people who are suffering from addiction. Something that's not talked about very frequently, but there are all kinds of settings here: outpatient counseling, group sessions for meeting people who share this share addiction as well. There are medications besides Narcan, which is not actually used to treat addiction, just to reverse an overdose, but there are medications that can treat the addiction itself, such as methadone or Suboxone, you may be familiar with. For certain people, an inpatient setting, so staying inside the hospital is the best scenario for them. So yeah, lots of options available for treatment. And we like to mention some of the treatment that we offer here at Cornell, mainly in Manhattan, although there are more treatment sites in Brooklyn as well. But the Vincent Dole Treatment and Research Institute is one place that offers medications for treating addiction. The Midtown Center for Treatment offers outpatient programs, also group sessions. So these are some contact numbers that if you know somebody who may benefit from this, we can provide you the contact information. The Odyssey House in East Harlem as well. So to conclude, I just want to bring it back to another image. I think if everybody wants to take a moment and think about someone they know who they're worried about could fall into the state, or someone who you have known before who has had an overdose or has an addiction, because I know I have someone I can think about for that, and I know I've talked a lot about numbers, but really this comes down to people in our communities, whether we know them or not, and equipping everybody with the tool to save somebody's life. Okay. All right, so thank you very much for your attention here, and for taking an interest in this issue and being willing to learn how to save somebody's life.
You can take one.
Yeah, please, any questions?
Thank you. I was wondering, with the treatment, the kit you're going to give out, many of us live in the tri-state area, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. So if you have a kit, can you use that outside of New York?
Yeah, great question. Yes, you absolutely can use the kit outside. So it's kind of interesting. Like, we're giving you a kit with a medication, which you are administering. It's something we think of, typically doctors, nurses are administering medication, but this is something that that really anybody who's received this training can provide. This medication, Narcan, is the brand name, or naloxone is the other name. Actually, recently the FDA approved it to be sold over the counter. So this is something that is legal and just being encouraged to be used in all 50 states, absolutely. So yeah, I want to just emphasize, there's, I can't speak to the equivalent of like a Good Samaritan law in the other states. Hopefully there is an equivalent for that. But with regards to using the kit, there's, absolutely, you can use it anywhere.
I'd like to make a statement as a medical missionary worker, dealing with emergencies at all times. I have a kit here that in my pocket, whenever I go out, I never know what I'm going to run into. And this is a peppermint. This is cayenne pepper. I went to a home not long ago, and as I went to the home, the lady just passed out. And this young man came up, he said, "What the hell happened?" And I was praying, and as I felt her pulse, there was none. I took out this cayenne pepper and put a little under her tongue. She started breathing again. I had a funeral. This gentleman, this elder in one of our churches, his auntie had died, and he had called to come and identify the body. He asked me if I could go with him. I asked him if he could get someone else to go with him. His wife was very sick. And I said, "Let me come to see your wife as someone else goes with you to Brooklyn." They were living in the Bronx. And he identified his wife's body. His wife, while he was away, identifying his wife's body, she died. I had to prepare myself for that man. And when he came back into the home, he passed out when someone shouted out, "Pansy's dead." Passed out. I took out my cayenne pepper and did the treatment. He recovered. And when we came to do the funeral, as he was coming into the funeral home, again he collapsed, stopped breathing. I said to someone, "Dial 911 as we are trained to do." But I took out again the cayenne pepper. And again, God restored him as a Seventh-day Adventist, medical missionary. I have seen this work so many times. Make a kit for yourself and try it. God will help you.
Thank you for sharing that powerful story. So I would like to move into the training here, which is just about 5 minutes. And anybody who likes to will be able to leave here with a Narcan kit. So this is what it looks like. Okay, so I'm basically going to quickly just review a lot of what we already talked about, how to recognize an overdose and what to do. It's just very quick, concrete steps, because in the moment, this is going to be frightening, a lot of pressure. So the goal is to just break it down, make it really simple, so that if you're in this situation, you can act quickly and really save somebody's life. So we talked about what an overdose looks like. So this could mean that you're going to be sure, thank you. So you could be on the subway, on the street, really anywhere, at a restaurant, at an event. You see somebody who's down, okay, like on the ground or slumped over is going to be the most frequent appearance of this. And you're going to be looking for the signs of an overdose. You're probably not going to know that it is an overdose for sure, but things you're looking for are they breathing normally, or are they taking like gasps or gurgling, like not breathing well? Are you seeing signs that they're not getting enough oxygen? So the blue in the earlobes, under the gums, under the lips, in the eyes, and you want to see if somebody is really unconscious or if they can wake up. So if you see someone you're concerned about like this, the first step is going to be, first of all, make sure that this is a safe situation for yourself. So you need to be aware of your surroundings before you approach somebody and start to take action. So once you've determined, okay, this is safe, I can go see what's going on with this person. First, you want to see if you can wake them up. So what we recommend is just really yelling, "Are you okay?" And you can tap on the shoulders, and you might need to be pretty forceful, and you do this a couple times. "Are you okay?" Tap on the shoulders, okay? And hopefully they will wake up from that. If not, then we have another way to check if they can wake up. So that's called the sternal rub. So if everyone could make a fist for me, we're going to use your knuckles and rub into the center of your chest. Yeah, I see some of you maybe have done this before. So this is supposed to be uncomfortable, and it's a little more powerful of a way to wake somebody up, okay? You know, we don't want to hurt somebody, but we're trying to see if we can really wake them up, okay? So we're looking at breathing, we're looking at blue discoloration, and we're looking at if they can wake up to the sternal rub, okay? If any of these are the case, they're not waking up to the sternal rub, they're not breathing properly, they appear blue, this is now an emergency situation, okay? And the next step is to call 911, okay? And we talked about the importance of that. This person is gonna need medical attention. We don't know if this is an overdose, but it looks like an overdose. In any case, they're gonna need to go to the hospital, okay? So call 911 at that point, okay? And then really the next step is you're gonna give the Narcan medication. So, sure, yeah, that would be great. So up on the screen here and up there we have we show the contents of the kit. There are a few things, but the most important things in there are 2 doses of Narcan. It's a nasal spray. And in addition, there's an instruction booklet and there are some gloves that you can use optionally, but really the main thing in here that you are gonna need is gonna be the Narcan nasal spray, okay? So somebody is down, you're worried about them. Now I'm gonna tell you how to give them the Narcan. So it's very simple. You want the person to be laying flat on the ground, face up, head tilted back a little bit. You're gonna take your Narcan nasal spray, and we call it the 3 Ps, the 3 steps, okay? So peel the package open, place the nozzle inside one nostril, and then push to administer the Narcan. I want to emphasize that you just push it once and it sprays the medication into the nose. So you don't pump it or test it or prime it. It's just a one push and that dispenses all the medication, okay? So just to repeat that, peel, place, push. Can you repeat that after me so we can remember it? Peel, place, push. Good. Pretty simple, okay? So peel, place, push, you've administered Narcan. And if they've had an overdose from an opioid, they should start to wake up and start breathing within about 2 minutes, okay? So you're gonna be watching this person very closely. Hopefully the ambulance has arrived, there are people helping you, but you're watching to see, does the chest start to rise and fall? Do they start to wake up? If it's been 2 minutes and there's no change, they're not starting to wake up, then that's why we have a second one of these in there. So each one is just a one-time use. So it's been 2 minutes, still not breathing, still not waking up. You're gonna repeat the same 3 steps. What were they again? Good, okay. After you've given Narcan, the safest thing is to put the person in what we call the recovery position, which we have a picture here. Basically putting the person on their left side and with their hand under their head and their knee out. Basically just put them on the side so that if they wake up and they become sick or vomit, then it makes it less likely that they'll choke, okay? So you have these 2 doses. You can try 2 minutes apart, peel, place, push. Hopefully the person starts to wake up. At this point, if it hasn't already been done, call 911. This person is going to need some serious medical attention, okay? And I just want to remind you as well about the Good Samaritan law. This protects you in New York State from any prosecution for being around drugs or for the person who's having an overdose, which really enables you to call 911 just to help them and not worry about getting in trouble or getting this other person in trouble as well. So that's pretty much it. It's really simple. Call 911, peel, place, push, and make sure this person gets to a hospital. Sometimes someone will wake up and they may be confused. They may not want to go to the hospital. So this is really super important to get them to a hospital. But if someone is refusing to go in the ambulance, you may offer to give them a ride yourself, or a last resort is to make sure that someone stays with this person for at least 3 hours, because as I mentioned, the Narcan can wear off and they can fall back into their overdose. So you may need to save their life a second time. But really, we'd like to get 911 call to get this person to a hospital so we can give them the medical attention they need. So that's really it. Do you feel like this is something you might be able to do if it comes to it? Yeah, okay, good. I hope you don't have to, but we want to give you this toolbox. Keep it with you wherever you go. You never know when you may need it, and you'll be able to save somebody's life with this. So yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so very much. Quite informative, and I want you to understand something. I don't know how many of you saw on television where fentanyl is just coming in by the boatloads, and it's being used so frequently and people are using so much fentanyl, or they're putting fentanyl in drugs because it's so powerful. So it just takes a little to make the drugs go further. That police officers are passing out or dying. There were two, one in the south and one police officer out west. And the officer went to the window. The guy was doing drugs. And she said, roll the window down. And he rolled the window down. And when he rolled the window down, he just breathed. And the woman died. It took 4 doses. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 doses of naloxone to bring her back to life. The same situation occurred out west. The other thing that I want you to understand is if you're in the street and if you see, or if someone says, oh, you know, I need a naloxone kit, because you're going to find out a lot of people in our communities know more about naloxone than we do. And so they're going to say, you know, do you have a kit, anybody? So you give them the kit. Or you may see someone and you may use the kit on the person. And you know that you don't have 3 hours to stand here. So this is what I tell everyone. Look around, find out who's their friend, who's their cousin, who knows this person, and tell them straight up, I can't stay here for 3 hours. But someone is going to have to stay here with this person. And just because the person wakes up in an hour doesn't mean they're okay. That means, years ago, they used to say you have to walk the person, keep them busy, and all of this sort of stuff. Keep the person busy. Now, that's a good scenario where the naloxone brings the person back to life. But there are other occasions where naloxone has not or will not bring the person back to life. So what I'm going to do is show you how to do hands-only CPR, which basically, John Travolta made the song, Staying Alive. Up, up, up. You guys remember the song? No? Okay. All right, I'm glad to hear that. I don't want to be dated all by myself. So this is what you're going to do. So what you're going to do, this person is lying down, okay? Now, I'm going to say a couple of things, okay? Some people are more blessed in this area, okay? Others, like me, well, not so blessed. Blessed, but not so blessed. So, big problem. When women who are fully endowed are not breathing, problem. People don't want to open the shirt. People don't, they're embarrassed. What I say is better let her live. So if you don't want to deal with the bra, let the bra stay on, but open the shirt, okay? The other thing I tell people, and this goes for people who have heart attacks, African American men are dying more from heart attacks than any other group. They're not old. 22, 25. Obesity and all the stuff that goes with it. If you look at East New York and Brownsville, you look at the numbers, young men are dying, yes, from guns, heart attacks. Problem is, nobody knows CPR. So I'm not going to talk with pulmonary. I'm not going to say to you, you have to breathe for them. Because in our community, in the Caribbean community, African American community, what's the first thing people say about the mouth? I don't know where their mouth has been. Now that's the story that we're not talking about. So now you don't have to use your mouth. Just use your hands. And this is what you're going to have to do. Identify the middle of the chest. Look at the person's nipple line. Now, I'm going to stress nipple line. God placed the nipples in a spot, perfect spot. I'm talking about where they begin and not where they end. You got it? Okay. So now you take a look at that line, where they start at. And that is going to be, if you feel the middle of your chest bone, you feel it, you feel that it's hard, okay? Not the soft part. So you're gonna come up, and it's roughly maybe about 3 inches, but if you don't want to deal with the inches, nipple line, middle of the chest. What you do is you take your hands, the heel of your hand, you place in the center of the chest. Okay, I gotta remember he has legs. And when I place my hands in the middle of the chest, I push. Now this mannequin is very good because the mannequin has lights, and the lights indicate 2 things. One, you have to press an inch and a half deep, and you have to go roughly 100 to 110 beats a minute. Now, if you do this, the person will live. You will keep them, the oxygen coming in and the blood circulating until 911 arrives. Now, remember this. You have seen life come back into the body. Yes. You have seen the person restored. Do not get upset when 911 arrives and says to the person, you want to go to the hospital? And they say what? No. No. Don't feel like I've wasted my time. Don't feel that way. Just know, pray for that person, pray for deliverance, pray that they'll get it straight, and that's it. Okay? But if the person does not wake up and 911 is on their way and the person cannot respond, guess what you're doing? Staying alive. Up, staying alive. Up. You got it? God bless you all. Thank you. If anyone wants to practice, you can.
Thank you very much, Reverend Dr. Lula-Mae Phillips and Dr. Balmuth. At this time, we're going to have Colette. Actually, while she's coming up, maybe we can have offering. Yeah. So while she's setting up, we can have offering.
Are they, I don't know if anyone's up there. Are they going to change out the PowerPoint? Are you able to do that up there? Okay. Seeing if I still have a friend up there. They got the good. 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 What a simple way to help people. I think we can all do that, can't we? And I've seen ACS, well, it wasn't an ACS center, it was another church who just had a basket of them on site, of those, and they just kept a basket because they had a whole lot of homeless people coming in. So they knew they would need it at some point. So it's a wonderful resource. Ah, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So what does our offering go to? Has it come to the center? Well, very good. Very nice. Keep it there. Yeah. It's
If we can please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very much for the offering that was given. We thank you that it will be able to be used so well that the money will seem like it was doubled or even tripled. We ask that you be with our speaker, Colette Newer, as she again talks about a subject that is needed in our church. Thank you again. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Well, we're going to go into thrift stores. Is thrift store something you have ever thought of? Yes. It is something you've thought of. Set up and everything else. Okay. There we go. Let's get
I
you.
said we started one, and we worked it a little, but it didn't materialize 100%.
Okay. Okay. What kinds of challenges did you have?
It was more or less space,
Okay.
because we had enough space to do it, but then we had to use other things in the same space. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to talk a little bit. That's interesting. And we're gonna fly through this a little bit so we can get to our food distribution. But some of this is a tour of some of the other ACS thrift stores to see what they're doing and what they look like, because thrift stores are a very flexible ministry. So we'll talk about some things, but if there's something in particular that you were facing or challenged by, please, let's talk. Let's talk. Is a thrift store an ACS ministry? And obviously I would not be talking to you about them if it was not, but these are centers of ministry. Sometimes we think of thrift stores a little different. You've already passed some of these hurdles. So it is a center of ministry. It turns relief of giving things into community development. It brings, when we look at our different strategies, you're starting to bring something into a community that changes the dynamics and resources in that community. This is one of the largest, I think this is the largest center thrift store that we have in the division that I'm aware of, is Samaritan Center in Ooltewah, Tennessee. This is down by Southern University. They use the money from the thrift store to do case management. They hire social workers with that money. They have school supply boxes for teachers, disaster relief, personal care items. You can see some of the numbers of how much they gave out, and they also give out financial assistance. And one more. This is huge. They have a staff of 42 staff members, 31 are for the thrift store, and 6 to 18 volunteers per day working at this place. 80% of the center's budget is from the thrift store, which Gross is about between 1.4 and 1.6 million dollars. So this is the biggest one. This is the biggest one, and that includes not just sales, but we talked earlier about the recycling, the canners. This is also considered, they take on the role of recycling for their community. They consider that part of their mission is to help with that flow of goods. So they do quite a bit of metal recycling. They have the baler that condenses down the clothing into big bales so they can do that. These people have space. These people have space. So they do the rag recycling, and they bale about 1 million pounds of clothes per year. So this is an operation. I did not show you some of the donation areas because it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. You need that type of space. So you're balancing your space with your volunteers and making sure you can manage with the space that you have. One of the advantages of a thrift store is it's an open door to the community. You don't have restrictions anymore about when people can come, who can come. Anybody can come, no matter their income level, their walk of life, they come to a thrift store. So you have an opportunity, no interviews, no qualifications, to start to talk and connect with everybody in your community. It also increases their accountability for their own spending. They're not just receiving things, they have to make choices, they have to make decisions about their money. You are not in those choices, no blame on you. It is everything that they choose is up to them. Oops, it transforms those relationships because you're able to step back and you're able to say, we're just here to help. It expands your scope of ministry, because I'll tell you, there are people who will not come for something for free, and they will never come and ask you for help, but they need help. So when you have affordable goods, you're able to expand who you're able to help. You're also able to just meet other people at the Chamber of Commerce, some of those other spaces that you get to be in as a business, and that expands what you're able to do. And in a thrift store, you can do job creation. You can do some other pieces that also expands that scope of ministry. It also becomes a funding source, which I think is usually one of the first places we like to start, is to say we can do so much more if only. If we changed this, and in the US there is a glut of used clothes, and if we can change it into a more malleable resource of money, then think of the things that you could do. And it also, you still have the flexibility. You are still able to offer things for free if somebody needs them. You're not stuck there. If you know them and you have that discretion to give someone a voucher, to just bring them in, oh, thank you, to just bring them in and let them shop and see what they need. So the first thing when you're getting started is to know your mission. Why are you starting a thrift store? And why don't, so we have some of the reasons. What were your reasons for starting? Tell me just anything, anybody. Why would you dream of them, even if it's a hypothetical?
We were trying to put back dignity in some people. Mm-hmm. I didn't get a handout. I actually bought this. Big change.
You what?
I said it was a big change when they say, even though they pay $1, I bought this. I actually bought this.
Yes, they're able to contribute even just $1, and most people can do $1. Most people can do that. So you're starting to look. Any other reasons why you think a thrift store would be intriguing to you?
I believe it cuts down on the churches giving you things, because you are serving the community. The community would be the one that would be giving you the resources. And then you minimize your expenses because you have an income.
Yeah. Yeah, the church's offering can only go so far. We do not have enough in offering to meet the needs of the community, but now you're allowing the community to contribute to helping the community too. That's very good. Your ACS thrift store is structured under the church, because ACS is structured under the church. So you can have different constituencies, you can be under a single church, or you can have multiple congregations coming together to support a thrift store. Who will manage and lead it, though, does need to be defined. If you have multiple churches working together, we need to know who's the point person and who's the lead. Because sometimes, what is it you say? When everyone's in charge, nobody's in charge. So you want to make sure that it is clear what is happening and what each church's role is in this project. Let me see. And to know, too, that when you are an ACS center, because you're under the church, if you are paying people, that payroll goes through the conference. And then you are tapped into the church's payroll system and the church's pay structure. So they're going to have to find, so it may not, sometimes in ministry we just want to pay people just the bare minimum, but now you're into the church structure, which still isn't huge, but it can be more than a ministry is used to paying, especially, we're a little more shoestring sometimes, but just to be prepared. Any questions on that? On structure, because you don't have to be a separate 501c3 to do this. You can do it under the church. So we're going to look at Portland ACS. This is a rather large commercial building in a commercial area. And behind us on the other side of the parking lot is a similar building that has the furniture, large goods, and the sorting. And then this building, the purple part and back a little bit, is the thrift store. Down on the end in the back part is a food pantry, and there used to be a medical clinic in the far back on the side you can see, but that has closed. And on the other side of the building, on the street behind, they purchased a house and have a dental clinic there. So this is a very old operation. It grew out of a traditional ACS center with clothes and just the work of saying, okay, what do we need to do different? For dignity is one of their largest driving values. There's a lot with them. They have a lot of experience. Here's the inside of the store a little bit, and you can see in the middle picture where they're doing sales. If it's a green tag, it's 50% off. Orange tag is, does it say 25 cents? Yeah, I think it's orange tag and then 75% off. So they tag each, as they're tagging clothes or items in a particular month, it's assigned a color. So the next month it starts to go down in price until 25 cents, get it out of our way. Get it out. Their average price for items sold in 2019 was $1.46. $1.46 average. So their prices are pretty low, but at the same time, their annual sales are in the $500,000 range. So they do have some paid staff, but because of that income coming into the ACS programming, they have been able to weather some pretty serious financial storms in recovery, in recessions and whatnot, that they have this second income that is more consistent than a grant. A grant or offering can disappear on you. People will still continue to buy affordable clothes. And then this is a picture of their clinic, their dental clinic. In 2017 or 18, the house next door was purchased, and they purchased that out of their reserves because over time they're putting money aside, so when the opportunity comes up, they were ready to take advantage of it. So then they went and applied for grants and did fundraising to backfill that money, but they had the resources to be able to do it. So their thrift store, you can see their operations. They have the food pantry and the dental clinic. The food pantry includes a mobile unit that goes out to about 11 different places in the surrounding communities, smaller churches, smaller or apartment complexes that need help. So they actually have quite a bit, and a good portion of it is funded through that thrift store. So again, to get started, you need to look at who is your ideal customer. Where do they live? How do they travel? What is their income level? Okay. Or they get. Yeah. Sure. Yes. So you're looking at who your customer is so that so you understand how to market and how to structure your own store. This I don't know that we always do well because we're moving from ministry aspect rather than business. So we need to understand our customer base. And there are several research methods. You can do surveys, interviews, observation. This is one from Claritas that you can just go online and pull information. So this is from your zip code. And it is small. This is from your zip code, though, and on the right, I clipped out one of the one of the population segments that they found here to look at what are their demographic traits. They're urban, mid-scale, assets were below average, household technology was high, ages 25 to 44, mostly without kids. This was kind of a bohemian. They labeled them connected bohemians, or in your neighborhood. But then when you look at lifestyle and traits, they're also they own a Volvo, they eat at organic health food restaurants, they shop at H&M, they visit comedy clubs, visit New York City. So you can start to see who is even here that would come here, and why would somebody like that come to an ACS thrift store? I could guess here. I would say someone like that could come for some unique items that only a thrift store is going to have. They might like the recycling aspect of it, that this isn't going to the landfill, but come and get some goods, and kind of the uniqueness of what you find in a thrift store. This is going to be really small for you. This is just the census. The census site has a business builder piece, and it does some of the same stuff. Looking at the consumers, you put in your zip code, and it will talk to you about the consumers right here in this zip code. Again, your consumer expenditures per household is $149,533.02 in this zip code. This is what people spend each year. And then it tells you what they spend it on. $718 is spent on alcohol. Oh my goodness, $254 on beer consumed away from home. That's not even alcohol, apparently. Those were the alcohol in the home, and then you have alcohol and wine away from home. Men's apparel, women's apparel. You can start to see what do they like, because when you take donations into your thrift store, you have to decide what you're going to take. You have limited space, so you want the most valuable products staying on your floor. So what are they going to buy? What do they want to buy? You can look at your facility. If you own, rent, buy, you're looking at some different aspects. A good location is going to get you better traffic, safety, accessibility, neighborhood that you're in. Do people feel safe coming here? Can they get here? And is there the traffic flow, or is it back behind the church in a corner where they don't see it, where they can't even find it? Then the team you're looking at, we are zipping through this because I know it's a long afternoon and we're going to get you moving. So if there's something, though, that you see is just really catching frustration, just tell me, and we'll go a little deeper. But you can see you need a team, and the team is going to depend on how big of a store and your own operations. There's a lot of flexibility in a thrift store, but you do need a store manager. You need that point person. You need somebody who knows accounting, whether they're paid or not. Managers for key operations. So key operations may be sorting donations, volunteers, recruiting and training volunteers. So some of those key pieces, what happens putting things out on display. Some people love that, others don't. So assign that to them, and they can be in charge of that piece. Yeah, there's a lot. Administrative assistant, wouldn't we all wish for that in your ACS center for your own assistant? But it can happen in some places. It just depends who you have. Cashiers you are going to need. That is going to be an essential one. And stocking shelves. So are there some of these duties that can be combined? Are there any of these that need to be paid versus volunteer? Do you see any in there that you say that one has to be paid position? Are there any positions in here that should be volunteer or should be paid?
At present, I mean, we have all volunteers. I wish it were possible for us to pay, and there are avenues where we can get the money to pay. But the way the system is set up, it becomes difficult in that, even, for instance, we could get the government to pay a lot of stuff, but Adventists still don't believe that you should take money from the government.
Yeah.
Although you're dealing with the government. and the
Whose
people-
money? Where did the government get their money?
The people's money.
The people money.
That should be coming
It's
from
our money.
the people back to the people. But we seem to lose sight of that, I don't know, because our life expectancy seems to be, Jesus is coming soon. So we don't have to do this. But the need is there, and he's the one who said, occupy till I come.
Occupy, there you go.
So we take whatever we can. We try not to, because they do have a certain amount of rules that govern what you can do if you take.
Yes. That question gets into what we talked about earlier on the partnerships. If you take money from the government, you are becoming a partner with them. So you're looking at them and saying, where do we overlap? If you don't overlap, don't take that money. That's not the money for you. You take the money where your goals and where it does work for both of you, and then you're fine. Then you're fine. I think Ellen White tells us to take money from those we don't consider worthy to give money, but it joins them with us in service, and that is a very good entry place.
There's another problem in here in Brooklyn, at least around here. Most people used to give their clothes to Salvation Army, their furniture, their vehicle, everything. But then they recognized that Salvation Army was not giving back. Mm-hmm. And I had a problem right here because we had the building right here, and they were actually forcing some people to service. You have to have a worship service before we feed you a meal or before you can do this. We had right in this building next door to us, not the immediate one, the one after that, they are the ones who did for people who are on drugs and so on, they had a special program for them. I met the guy who did it, and he was a Seventh-day Adventist working for the Salvation Army. But our church have never embarked on trying to do it for ourselves. And that could be a serious problem too.
That is too. Yes. Yes, we have a lot of skills in this church that we don't always use for church ministry and opening up some of those avenues. And this in particular, when I ask who needs to be paid, any of these positions can be anything, either one. They can be paid, they can be volunteer. The thing you need to know is that if you have a cashier that's paid and a cashier that's a volunteer, then you have a problem. For the same job, it needs to be equal. Yeah. And the other thing you do need for each one is a job description. This is probably my pet peeve, because we work so much with friends and family that we don't codify things. This is the type of stuff that goes into a job description, and what a job description, it helps you to recruit people, because people can actually say, okay, that's what I'm doing. You have defined it enough so that other people can understand what's expected of them. It also minimizes conflict. If somebody is not doing their job and you have to go and tell them that, but you have never defined their job for them, then it becomes very personal. If you have this written down, you have something outside of both of you to say, this is what this position is, what is happening? Did you not understand this? Do you not like it? Is there a different space for you? And so it gives you some talking points for addressing personnel problems that otherwise can feel very personal. Yes.
The thing is, it's not limited to the church membership only.
Yes, yes.
So we have to do that separation to make sure, because most people say, well, you may have heard this is common. I pay tithes. I deserve so-and-so, or I should get so-and-so. When by qualification, you don't qualify. So you have to look for the best to do the job, yet within the principles of the church.
Inside and outside, yeah, you've got to define it for people. And they don't get to be entitled about what they get to do. You're defining, these are the requirements to do this particular piece. So you don't get to come in and say, well, I'm a volunteer, I can do whatever I want. And I'm not feeling like this today, so I'm gonna go over here and do this. And somebody who was doing that is now getting their toes stepped on, and we just start getting into some really negative spaces among our own staff, and that is reflected out. People know when you are coming into a place where there's conflict. They know it. And we can't just say, well, don't do that, we're Christians. We actually have to work through the conflict to say what is causing the conflict, and oftentimes it's something this simple, just to say, this is what your job is. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Let's find you one that does, but you don't get this title. Now we're going to skip over to a very small, you are looking at most of it right there, thrift store. This is the Better Living Center. They are out. Port Townsend is on the peninsula of Washington State. Small town, everybody knows each other, and this was known for many, many years as the free store, because people just went there. So it's not as much, more people went there than probably, a lot more earthy people, little granola hippie type people go there. So they love the used. They love the used. And so they finally started putting a jar out front as you're checking out for donations. And they found they did get quite a bit of donations. And so they just flipped this to put up some signs in the store of how much things were. They don't go through all of the bother of pricing everything individually. It's a small staff. They're all volunteers. And I think the gal on the left, yeah, she's on the left. She is not an Adventist either, but they're very committed to what's happening there. So they post their price list. It's $1.25 for pants, coats $2.25, shirts $1 if they're long sleeve. T-shirts are 75 cents, underwear 50 cents, and shoes $1.25. That they just have some signs posted around, and at the end of the day, when you're checking out, the cashier has the ultimate final say. So if you're getting a really nice brand name, they may say, you know what, you're gonna, how about $5 for that coat? And nobody cares. They're like, it's still a bargain. They are good. They don't do any furniture because they just don't have the space. People pick out their own stuff and pay for it. This is what the director says. There is ownership and pride in being able to buy their own stuff. And then if they come in with $20 vouchers, she also gives them credit. If they get $8 worth, they do. So they work with other agencies to give out vouchers, so they partner with the local agencies to be able to send people there to get stuff. And this is their little building. You can see the cashier up there. It's just a simple table at the door with a cash register, and our main gal on the bottom sorting donations as they come in. Very, very simple. Their net profits support the general budget of ministry in the church. So it's the school, prison ministry, cooking classes. There's a radio station there. They also give money to the homeless shelter and a couple other things. So in 2022, they grossed $27,293, and they gave away in vouchers about $7,400. So you can see, a simple program just to bring in a little bit to do. You look at financial considerations, you're going to need your budget, and these are some of the things that go on the budget. Even if you're not paying personnel, you probably want to give maybe smocks for them or something. There's going to be costs associated with the personnel, or thank you gifts, that type of thing. Supplies like price tags. Waste disposal is a real challenge in thrift stores because you will get everybody cleaning out their stuff and giving it to you because they don't want to, it makes them feel better. Some it makes them feel better, some they don't want to pay to get rid of it. There's a lot of reasons. It's going for a cause. Somebody will want this. I know nobody wants it. Nobody wants it. Financial practices, you need to know what financial practices you're going to do. You are under the church. The church does audit its own entities, so you do have that, which is nice. You do collect state tax, and you're going to work locally. In my experience, you still collect sales tax. You're still liable for those. And follow all the standard financial practices. And your conference is going to be able to help you a lot with those. Your record keeping, making sure that your deposits are being done in a way that is up to standards. A lot of this is similar to the offerings we take. You know, you have two people counting offerings. You have a lot of standard practices that we don't always think about. It's going to be like that here to make sure people are safe if they're taking it to the bank. Are they safe? When can they do this? Who gets to do this? And making sure it's very, very, very clear. Pricing strategies. And this is going to come back a lot to your mission. Is your mission for the dignity and making affordable goods, or is it more leaning towards fundraising? Is the ones that do more fundraising, their prices tend to be a little bit higher. So it just depends what your mission is, and then you can set your prices accordingly. You're wanting to appeal to your customers, balanced with meeting expenses and having a profit. And sales, there are so many good ways to do sales. I have seen the color of tags, which we saw at Portland ACS, that it's marked down, each color is marked down over each month, so it starts to go down in price, and then you can pull them after 4 months. Some people, one of them structures their sales around the color of the item. Anything brown today is half off. And people are just like, woo, is this brown? And they say, well, does it look brown to you? And they say, yeah, it does. And it's like, well, then it's half off. And they just don't worry about it so much. Is it blue? Is it blue or is it green? We don't know. And so it's just to create some energy and some excitement around coming to the thrift store. Another one that particular group does is they have at the cash register Bible questions. You answer the Bible question and you get a discount. You don't know the Bible question? Well, let's look it up because we want you to have that. We want you to get your discount. So here's the Bible and let's look it up so you can get your discount. Very good. And I love this. A quick nickel beats a slow dime. Keep your prices so your inventory is moving. Think about where your inventory is coming from and how you're going to sort it and where it's going to go. Oops, here's Sunbridge, Walla Walla, Washington. It's a former nursing home. It's a nursing home that they've converted. And the man on the left, he's specialized. This one in particular does a lot with online sales. And if you're having space issues, this may actually be something to consider. He does mostly books. He's got a bunch of Beanie Babies he's posting on eBay. They actually had a book come through with the nameplate from the Library of Ellen White, and they put it online, don't put that in the thrift store. They put it online and receive $1,500 for one book. So there's some really neat things that come through. They have their furniture part, and then you can see the COVID, they really got into the online sales because they needed to. And they also took the chance to convert to a barcode system. So these are the people who have that next thought, we really want to do this, so when something happens, they could. So they have another volunteer putting things on Poshmark, another one who was a photographer, so he takes all the photography stuff home and evaluates it and posts it. So they do a lot of just segmenting that out with their volunteers. Thrift and gift sales, $589,000. It supports a dental clinic, family assistance, education, social support. They host a lot of classes and other agencies doing AA meetings, whatever, in their facility. And then youth summer camps, they send kids to Stamp. 4 full-time, 11 part-time, plus volunteers. And there they are, you can see outside, trying to stem the tide of garbage coming in. They have their donation policies timed so someone's there, because if nobody's there, less accountability, they can just dump it. So you got to get rid of it. But identify your message, and we are flying through a lot of this. Why do you want to sell your product? What does your product do for your company, your customers? These are helping you market, and think about what attracts you. Most of us understand our own marketing avenues. You have a lot of signage, newspaper, Facebook, churches, word of mouth, all sorts of avenues to get the word out and get people in there. And I think I'll just end here with Troy and Deary. We've got policies and additional, I'll do this and then an additional resource, which is right before the question, so we'll see if he can jump us. Troy and Deary are in Idaho on the Panhandle, very, very economically depressed. Troy, Idaho has a population of 1,000, Deary of about 500. You're looking at Main Street. No stoplight, no stop sign. They're coming on, there are stop signs in town, but very, very small. Here's their thrift store. In that church, you can see that they have put up a sign, and there's your prices, and then they have this beautiful piece next to the register where you have all your policies and additional pricing. So whoever's there, whatever volunteer is standing there, they can reference it and they're good to go. Here's the other one. You can see the little tags on the clothes on the bottom. They just use a color tag. They don't even use price tags. So they just put a color on there, and that helps them move their inventory. A community volunteer helped them put in a new register and point of sale, and they also sell from here's some policies. And I'm going to go to this one, which is the thrift store loan. This is an ACS loan that you have available to you. It is interest-free, and it's really a revolving fund for thrift stores. So this is no collateral. We're not going to come and take your inventory back to the office. You may want us to, but we're not going to take it if things don't work out. But it's up to $20,000 just to get started or to expand. And then it's over quarterly payments beginning a year after the loan is approved, so you have time to get sales up. And then over 3 years, quarterly payments. So if you get $20,000, it's about $1,700 per quarter to pay back. And it's just so we can continue to support other thrift stores as they come on. But again, there's no interest, no collateral. We are your partners. We're your partners. We are not here to take anything down. So I think I am going to...
Question on that. That comes through the conference and not through individual churches.
The loan, you are the recipient of the loan, but you do need the conference support.
Okay.
But it's the payee and the recipient is the thrift store, the local thrift store. little bit like the seed grant, where we do rely on the conference to vet and make sure that it's a viable place and to do some of that work, because we're just not close enough to know who is a good candidate. So they do that part, but it comes to you here.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you so very much for staying by. And we're going to have the pastor close us out.
Let the church say amen. It's been a long day, but a very informative one. We want to thank you, Elder Collett, and your husband Brad, for being with us today, and you truly blessed us from morning. And let's give affirmation to this wonderful team and to the NAD, ACS ministries that allow you to be here with us today to share so much with us. And we thank you for what you did. I believe information was recorded, right? That we can go back and look, because it's hard to take everything in one session, so we have to go back and look at it. But some of the key people who needed to get it, they have been here. Amen. And I'm sure we'll be able to use to strengthen the ministry that we carry on here in this church and community. So thank you again. And may God bless you, and may God bless your ministry as you continue to serve the North American division. Amen. And wherever else He takes you, okay? Amen. And to our other presenters that left us, they also were good. The two doctors, we thank them at the door, because we did not get to say it here, but we thank them. They were also very informative. I need to get my kit, okay? So who did not get a kit? Who did not get their kit? You got to take the names, because they are the ones. So take the name of who didn't get a kit here.
Several of them left that day.
Right, they didn't get a kit, but take those who are here. Let's get the names of those who didn't get a kit, including starting with me. Get the names, because you wouldn't know when people leave here. They wouldn't know who. No, you don't. And many people left. Okay, Ella, you want to say anything? It's your day.
I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks to everyone, not just those who stay by, and I am glad you did stay by. We want to thank Colette, because she was one who was responsible for the program. I know she keep in contact with you. She must have bored you to death, but you're here. All right. And to all the others of Hanson Place, I know I'm seeing people from Mount of Olive. We appreciate you being here. And we hope that this was very intuitive to you, that you had learned something, and that in case there's a need, you can always call for your church. But God bless you. Continue to be faithful.
Thank you, and again to our leader, ACS leader here at Hanson Place. Let's give it up again for Elder Semper and his entire team, dedicated, hard-working team. All of you who work in the ministry, we thank you. All right, let's all stand to be dismissed. The Sabbath is not gone yet, but it's almost. Let's sing one verse of "Day is dying in the West." It's dying, it's not dead yet. Day is dying in the West, heaven is touching earth with rest. Wait and worship while the light sends the evening light through all the sky. Holy, 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 Lord God of hosts. Heaven and earth us a closing prayer.
Amen.
And ask God's blessings upon us as we embark upon this new week and traveling mercies as we return back to Washington, D.C.
Amen.
Amen. Let us pray. Eternal Father and our God, we want to thank you so much for a day well spent in worship and fellowship in your sanctuary. We thank you for your blessings on us today. We thank you that we were able to give you the praise, the honor, and the glory that's due to your name. Then we thank you, Father, for the newers who shared so much wealth of information with us today and their ministry with us today. I pray for traveling mercies for them as they travel back home to Washington, D.C. I pray, dear Father, that as we face a new untried week, that you will go before us, lead and guide as you have done in the past. We know that we can trust you. Even when we can't trace you, we can trust you. So bless us as we separate one from another. Keep us ever in your care, I pray. In Jesus' wonderful, precious name, amen. Amen. Amen.
Wednesday at noon, we are here.
Amen.
And at 7, we are here again for the evening power hour. But every Wednesday, we have 2 prayer meetings, midday and at noon. Make your pick, but try to catch one of the prayer meetings every Wednesday. Amen? God bless you.